I stood at that podium knowing every camera was rolling, every reporter waiting. He thought I'd be his perfect shield, the black woman who'd take the fall for his billion-dollar lies. But when I opened my mouth, I didn't just speak. I destroyed him. Here's how I did it. Hey everyone, I'm Jasmine, and I'm about to tell you a story that still gives me chills when I think about it. This isn't just another corporate scandal story. This is about how a powerful white billionaire tried to use me as his human shield, and how I turned the tables on him in front of the entire world. If you've ever felt used or manipulated by someone in power, this story is for you. Hit that like button because what I'm about to share will show you that sometimes the most powerful weapon you have is simply telling the truth. Let's dive in. 2 years ago, I was just another black woman grinding in corporate America. I had my MBA, 10 years of experience in public relations and a reputation for being the person who could handle any crisis. I was good at my job, but I was tired. Tired of being the only black face in boardrooms, tired of having to work twice as hard for half the recognition. That's when the call came. Miss Johnson, this is Patricia from Hartwell Industries. Mr. Hartwell would like to meet with you regarding a senior position. I'd heard of Hartwell Industries, of course, everyone had. David Hartwell was worth about $12 billion, and his company was everywhere: real estate, technology, pharmaceuticals. The man was untouchable. I walked into that downtown skyscraper feeling like I was walking into my future. The office was everything you'd expect: floor-to-ceiling windows, marble floors, art that probably cost more than my car. And there he was, David Hartwell himself, tall, silver-haired, with that smile that I now know was practiced in front of mirrors. Jasmine, he said, standing up like we were old friends. I've been following your work, that crisis you handled for Morrison Tech. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. He offered me the position of Chief Communications Officer. The salary was more than I'd ever imagined making: stock options, a corner office. Everything I'd worked for my entire career was being handed to me on a silver platter. But here's the thing about silver platters: they're usually hiding something rotten underneath. The first few weeks were a dream. I had a team of 15 people, a budget that seemed unlimited, and David treated me like I was his right-hand woman. He introduced me to investors, took me to high-profile events, and made sure I was photographed with him everywhere we went. You're the future of this company, he'd tell me, always with that same practiced smile. You represent everything we're trying to build. I should have paid more attention to that word, represent, because that's all I was doing. I was representing something, not actually being something. The red flags started small: documents that didn't quite add up, meetings I wasn't invited to even though they were about my department, phone calls that stopped when I walked into the room. But the biggest red flag was how much David loved putting me in front of cameras. Jasmine needs to be the face of our diversity initiative, he'd say. Jasmine should handle this interview. Let's get Jasmine on that panel. I thought he was investing in my career. I thought he saw my potential. But David Hartwell wasn't investing in me, he was investing in what I represented. He was buying himself a shield, and I was too grateful for the opportunity to see it. Within 6 months, I was everywhere: magazine covers, conference keynotes, television interviews. I was the face of Hartwell Industries' commitment to diversity and inclusion. I was the proof that the company was progressive, forward-thinking, and ethical. The media loved me. The woman changing the face of corporate America, they called me, a role model for the next generation. David made sure those articles were framed in my office, made sure I saw every positive mention. But while I was becoming the public face of the company, I was being slowly excluded from the actual business. Budget meetings happened without me. Strategic planning sessions were scheduled when I was traveling. Important decisions were made, and I'd find out about them through company memos like everyone else. You're too valuable externally, David would explain when I questioned it. We need you focused on the big picture, not getting bogged down in operational details. I bought it. God help me, I bought every word of it. The moment I should have known something was wrong was during a board meeting. I was presenting our quarterly communications report when one of the board members, an older white man named Harrison, interrupted me. David, he said, not even looking at me, are we sure we want to be putting so much of our exposure on one person? The room went quiet. David's smile never wavered. Jasmine is the best at what she does, Harrison. The company is lucky to have her. But I saw the look that passed between them. I saw the way Harrison's eyes lingered on me, calculating. I was being discussed like an asset, not a person, like something that could be gained or lost. The first real crack in my perfect world came from an unexpected source: the cleaning lady. Her name was Rosa, and she'd been working at Hartwell Industries for 15 years. She was quiet, invisible, the way cleaning staff often are in corporate buildings, but Rosa noticed everything. Miss Johnson, she said one evening when I was working late, you seem like a good person, be careful. I looked up from my laptop surprised. What do you mean? I clean Mr. Hartwell's office every night. I see the papers he leaves out. I hear the phone calls he makes after everyone goes home. She paused, looking around nervously. There are things happening here that aren't right, and I think he's planning to blame someone else when it all comes out. She wouldn't say more, but her words stuck with me. I started paying attention to things I'd been ignoring, the way conversations stopped when I entered rooms. The way David's assistant would quickly close folders when I walked past her desk. The way certain financial reports were always still being prepared when I asked to see them. Then came the phone call that changed everything. Miss Johnson, this is Detective Martinez with the FBI Financial Crimes Unit. We'd like to speak with you about your employer. My blood went cold. I'm sorry, what? We're investigating some irregularities in Hartwell Industries' financial reporting. Your name has come up in some documents we've obtained. We'd like to ask you some questions. I agreed to meet with them, but I was terrified. What documents? What irregularities? I'd never seen any financial reports beyond the basic communications budget I managed. The FBI agents laid it out for me in a conference room downtown. Hartwell Industries had been falsifying financial reports for years. Inflating revenue, hiding losses, creating fake subsidiaries to move money around. The company was essentially a house of cards and it was about to collapse. The thing is, Miss Johnson, Detective Martinez said, a lot of these reports have your signature on them. I stared at the documents they showed me. My signature was indeed on them, but I'd never seen these papers before in my life. They were financial projections, investment reports, regulatory filings, things I'd never had access to. I've never seen any of these documents, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We figured as much, the other agent said. Your signature appears to be forged on most of them, but here's the problem, you're listed as the Chief Communications Officer. In the public eye, you're the face of the company. When this breaks, and it will break soon, you're going to be the first person people point to. They showed me more documents, internal memos about managing the narrative and controlling the story. My name was mentioned over and over again as the company's public face and primary spokesperson. Mr. Hartwell has been very careful, Detective Martinez explained. He's positioned you as the person responsible for all public communications about the company's financial health. When investors sue, when regulators come calling, you're going to be the one they go after first. The room was spinning. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd achieved was built on a lie, and when that lie came crashing down, I was going to be buried underneath it. We think you're a victim here, the first agent said, but we need your help to prove it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Rose's warning, about the way Harrison had looked at me in that board meeting, about David's constant insistence that I be the face of the company. I'd been played, completely, thoroughly played, but the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. This man had taken my dreams, my ambitions, my desire to succeed, and he'd weaponized them against me. He'd used my race, my gender, my gratitude, and my trust to set me up as his fall guy. The next morning, I went to work early and started digging. I used my access to the communications department to pull every email, every memo, every document that had my name on it. I found things that made my stomach turn. Internal communications about leveraging diversity and optics management. A memo from David himself about insulating leadership from potential fallout. But the smoking gun was an email chain I found buried in my assistant's files. It was between David and the company's lawyers discussing exit strategies and liability management. My name was mentioned 17 times. They were planning to fire me and blame the entire scandal on poor oversight and communications failures. I printed everything, I made copies, I stored files in places they'd never think to look, then I called the FBI agents back. I'll help you, I said. But I want to do this my way. The press conference was David's idea, of course. The financial irregularities had started to leak, and he needed to get ahead of the story. He needed his perfect shield to stand up and take the blame. Jasmine, he said, calling me into his office the day before, I need you to handle this. You're the best communicator we have. The media trusts you. He handed me a prepared statement. I read it over, my hands shaking. It was a masterpiece of corporate deflection. It acknowledged certain accounting irregularities and communications oversights. It promised full cooperation with investigators and expressed deep regret for any confusion. And it was written in first person. It was written for me to read as if I was taking personal responsibility for everything. David, I said, looking up at him, this makes it sound like I was personally responsible for the financial reporting. Well, he said, and for the first time his smile looked more like a shark's grin. As Chief Communications Officer, you were responsible for communicating our financial health to the public, if there were errors in that communication. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. I nodded and told him I'd be ready for the press conference, but I wasn't going to read his statement. I was going to read mine. The next morning, I stood in front of a room full of reporters. David was sitting in the front row, confident and relaxed. He thought he was about to watch me destroy my own career to save his. I looked out at all those cameras, all those faces, and I thought about every black woman who'd ever been used as a scapegoat, every person who'd ever been betrayed by someone they trusted. Good morning, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. My name is Jasmine Johnson, and I'm here to tell you the truth about Hartwell Industries. I saw David's face change. The color drained from his cheeks as he realized I wasn't reading his statement. For the past 18 months, I've served as Chief Communications Officer for this company. I was hired to be the face of Hartwell Industries' commitment to diversity and transparency. What I didn't know was that I was actually hired to be a scapegoat. The room erupted. Reporters started shouting questions. Cameras flashed. David stood up and tried to interrupt me, but I kept talking. I have with me today documents that show how Mr. Hartwell and his leadership team have been systematically falsifying financial reports while using me as a shield to hide their crimes. They forged my signature on documents I never saw. They positioned me as the company spokesperson specifically so that when their lies were exposed, I would be the one to take the fall. I pulled out the first document, the email chain about exit strategies and liability management. This is an email from David Hartwell to his legal team, dated 6 months ago, discussing how to manage the narrative when the accounting issues came to light. In this email, Mr. Hartwell specifically mentions using me as a buffer between the company and potential legal consequences. David was shouting now, trying to get security to stop me, but the reporters were on their feet, cameras rolling. This was the story of the year unfolding in real time. I was chosen for this role not because of my qualifications, though I am highly qualified, but because I was the perfect scapegoat. A black woman they could blame for their failures, a diverse face they could hide behind while they stole millions from investors. I held up another document, the forged financial report with my signature. This is a regulatory filing with the SEC that bears my forged signature. I never saw this document before yesterday, but when investigators come calling, this is what they'll point to. This is what they'll use to say I was responsible for misleading the public. The room was chaos now. David had given up trying to stop me and was pushing through the crowd toward the exit, but I wasn't finished. I'm here today to make it clear that I will not be anyone's scapegoat. I will not be the black woman who gets blamed for the crimes of powerful white men. I have turned over all evidence of these crimes to the FBI, and I will cooperate fully with any investigation. I looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching this who has ever been used, who has ever been set up to fail, who has ever been made to feel grateful for scraps while others feast, your voice matters. Your truth matters. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be silent. The explosion was immediate. Within hours, the video of my press conference had millions of views. Jasmine Johnson was trending on every social media platform. The FBI announced they were expanding their investigation. The SEC suspended trading on Hartwell Industries stock. David tried to fight back, of course. His lawyers released a statement calling me a disgruntled employee who was clearly motivated by personal grievances. They claimed I was trying to deflect attention from my own failures and oversights. But the evidence was overwhelming. The FBI had everything I'd given them plus what they'd already uncovered. Other employees started coming forward with their own stories. The company's accounting firm withdrew their audits. Board members started resigning. Within a week, David Hartwell was arrested on charges of securities fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. Within a month, Hartwell Industries had filed for bankruptcy. Within 6 months, David was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. The media coverage was intense. Some outlets tried to paint me as a whistleblower hero. Others questioned why I hadn't spoken up sooner. But I didn't care about the coverage. I cared about the truth, and the truth was finally out. The investigation revealed the full scope of the fraud. Hartwell Industries had stolen over $800 million from investors. The fake financial reports had been going on for over 5 years. And I wasn't the only employee who'd been set up as a potential scapegoat. There were others, mostly people of color and women, who'd been positioned to take the fall if things went wrong. David lost everything. His houses, his cars, his yacht, his reputation. His wife divorced him. His children changed their names. He went from being worth $12 billion to being worth nothing, sitting in a federal prison cell, but the real justice came from what happened after. The story of how I'd been used sparked a national conversation about corporate scapegoating and the way companies exploit diversity initiatives. New laws were passed requiring more transparency in corporate communications. The SEC created new guidelines for protecting whistleblowers. I started my own consulting firm, helping other companies build genuine diversity and inclusion programs. I speak at conferences around the country, sharing my story and helping other people recognize when they're being used. And Rosa, the cleaning lady who first warned me. She's now working as a victim advocate, helping other working class people who have been exploited by powerful corporations. We stay in touch, and she always reminds me that sometimes the most important voices are the ones that seem the quietest. Looking back now, I realize that the moment I decided to tell the truth was the moment I truly found my power. Not the fake power David had given me, the corner office, the fancy title, the media attention. Real power. The power that comes from knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone else define you. They tried to use my identity against me. They tried to make my race and my gender into weapons that would destroy me, but I turned those weapons around. I used my voice, my truth, my refusal to be silent as the very thing that brought them down. If this story inspired you to speak your truth, drop a comment below. Subscribe for more stories about people who refuse to be silenced. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their voice matters. And remember, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to be anyone's scapegoat. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one who's tired of being quiet. Your truth is your superpower, use it. Thanks for listening to my story, I'll see you in the next one.